And welcome back to the second segment of our show this morning. We have been joined on set by post-production executive for Warner Brothers Animation, none other than Greg Emerson. Good morning.
Good morning.
And of course, Seth Hernandez. He's the Certification and Compliance Officer for the Film and Media Arts Unit. Good morning once again, gentlemen.
And just of note, Greg is here as a post-production expert, not necessarily representing Warner Brothers. But let's talk a little bit about last night we saw the conclusion of the film festival, and we know that your visit is tied to that. Why is this such a big thing to have a film festival and an industry?
I think, I mean, it's such international exposure. It allows to see, what I love about film kind of in general is that it's so many different disciplines and arts kind of colliding together, right? Painting is one technique, one discipline, if you will. Cinematography or photography is another. Sound is another. With a movie, you have all of those things coming together. And it's neat to see not only all of that collide just with maybe a Belizean point of view, but then you have films from all over the region, all over the world, showing different points of view from all kinds of people. And you get judges from Toronto from Argentina, all judging these films, and it's really it's a great, fun experience, and film can be super rewarding that way.
And I forgot to ask one thing, because very often people want to figure out who you are.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about the type of work that you do as a post-production expert.
Oh, that's
and we know you've worked on Avatar, which a lot of people may know, and SpongeBob.
SquarePants, which is very important to the kids, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that he actually lived under the sea until last
yeah, he lives in a pineapple under the sea, if you recall. No, it's great. Post-production is all the nuts and bolts of actually bringing a movie together. Making a movie or a TV show is a complete team sport. It takes hundreds of people. That's why you have all the credits at the end, right? Post-production is really where all of that comes together. You take all of the artistry of people that have assembled all of the different pieces and worked with the director to kind of keep a singular vision. And now you have an opportunity to kind of bring that vision all the way to life, whether that's through kind of all the things I've talked about, through sound, through picture, through final color and all of that stuff. So I've had a very lucky career getting a chance to work in a lot of different disciplines. Avatar, for example, I worked at a stereo company called Stereo D for 6 years. And from about 2009 to 2015, we did something like 65 or 70 films in relatively a small scope, but taking movies that were shot with one camera, 2D, if you will, and converting them into two eyes to make them 3D, so that things reached out of the screen or went back into the screen, give you that experience. So as much as we were only involved in the one deliverable, like that one aspect of it, it was an amazing opportunity. I got a chance to work with all these filmmakers and these directors that I'd looked up to as a kid for years. James Cameron, Avatar, and we worked with him on Titanic, and we did another movie with him called Deep Sea Challenge, where he was racing to the bottom of the ocean. We worked with Steven Spielberg on Jurassic Park, and just an incredible experience. Guillermo del Toro, J.J. Abrams, all these people that I looked up to for years, and got to see their different styles, what they paid attention to. It really informed how I wanted to make movies and contribute in the future, because it's like, oh, these guys are all the best of the best. And so so it's been different capacities. At Warner Brothers, I'm very lucky to work with a very talented team. Animation is definitely a little bit different in terms of how it's constructed, and post-production is definitely involved much earlier and for much longer in the process. But we do, our post-production group is full of strong, smart individuals we've assembled, and for every episode, it takes like a year. I see something playing here. We'll do sound. Have the sound design taken care of. We'll do the sound mix. We'll make sure the composers are in the mix, and that the full picture is assembled. Make sure that the story is tight, working with filmmakers, showrunners, and directors, and then make sure the color is all balanced all the way through. And then to delivery. Delivery is not the sexiest part, but it's about making sure everybody gets what they need to be able to sell this around the world and broadcast it. Maybe at a station like this.
It's like for viewers, for whatever reason, we don't really pay close attention to what happens in the background in terms of putting something together.
Oh, absolutely.
We're only fascinated by what we see on the screen, but there's certainly a lot of work that goes into putting together a piece. Let's get Seth involved in the conversation here. From a local perspective, what has it been like in terms of looking at the film industry continue to grow?
From the local perspective, I think we need to sort of strike a balance. While we have the film festival that opens us to what is happening culturally and regionally in terms of the society and through film, and bringing in people like Greg, directors who interact with us, we need to, at some point in time, do an assessment. And what I decided to do this year was, after meeting Greg in July, was to see what we could do in terms of assessment, in terms of animation for Belize. That is one aspect. We need to come up with database to determine who all have the capability of being animators, who all are currently working as animators and at what level, and then develop some package for them to become at a level where people like Greg, Warner Brothers, or any other company would be willing to say, okay, you've reached a level that we could hire you. Then we had the screenwriting workshop, where we work with those who have interest in writing scripts for the screen. It's like putting all the components together. We had planned a 4-day workshop for people who are currently working in the industry, but we put that off, and we are going to hold that hopefully in the first quarter of the year, because actually trying to get everybody to access the educational tools, accessing the time to actually participate in these workshops are very important. We are simply trying to put all the components together. So in one aspect, you have looking at films around the world. You have trying to bring films into Belize to shoot. So it's like selling Belize as a destination spot for film. You have trying to build a core team that could be supportive to these film companies that comes in. Because ideally what we would want to see, we would want to see the companies come in to shoot, but hire locally, instead of bringing all these teams that would come in. For example, Lorena del Sol brought in something like 52 people. And so if we could cut that down, although Belizeans, quite a few Belizeans got the opportunity to work with them, if we could begin to cut that down, then we could see an increase in the economic aspect of the industry for Belize. To do that, we must educate our people to a level where these international partners could then say, okay, you guys are qualified here. We had an instance earlier this year where only the producer came down and hired locally. The camera person, the fixer, the sound, the lighting, everything was hired locally. So we are trying to build an industry, but at the same time striking a balance, not forgetting that we do not operate in a vacuum, but we want to operate with all the other aspects of the industries worldwide. At the same time, we want to also encourage local production. That's the reason for things like screenwriters workshop. But after someone from that workshop sits and writes a script, how do we move from there? Are we capable of producing something for international standard, that meet international standard? Something that we could see market outside of Belize, and not just look on it locally. So we are trying to do a developmental thing. It's taking quite a while. The building process is slow because the components have a cost to them, and so we have to prioritize. So that is what we have been doing.
Let me ask something, because when you talk about post-production, how do you know that you have a particular skill that is
applicable, perhaps?
Yeah, and employable, because people very often in Belize get caught up with, doing a hobby, and it's something that I do, but you don't know how to monetize it or take it to another professional level. So how do you get that kind of conversation out there, that if I like drawing, I could actually become an animator, but I might just need these particular skills to take it to the next level?
I think, if you don't mind me, I think that I think that filmmakers all around the world, I don't think that's Belizean at all. I think it starts as a hobby. I think it starts as a passion, and I think by only through process of doing projects over and over and over again, big, small, starting small is just fine. You get the chops to begin to approach a marketable skill, something that you can do. I love working big movies, like we've kind of talked about. I also do a ton of indie film. Small, very small budget stuff, but I like to keep my hands dirty in it. Do you know what I mean? That's how I began. I worked at a small TV station, much like this. I was actually just in the control room a couple minutes ago. It looks really similar to the control room I started at in Seattle. And getting into it while holding down a day job. I was a responsible member of society in another way while I got better and better and better. So much of post-production or art in any way, especially when it's the entertainment business, that they're both together, right? To be able to monetize it, I not only need to be able to do my art, I need to be able to do your art and your art, right? I need to be able to, let's say, draw in my style for my stuff. I need to be able to draw in your style if I'm going to support your movie, and your style for your movie, right? Japanese anime looks very different than a Disney film. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be employable, you need to be able to kind of do all those things. And that only comes from experience. Pencil mileage. When you get into post-production, it's the same sort of thing. Start on the small stuff that is yours, that you can express. And as those projects get larger, I said film's a team sport, right? Mm-hmm. As it gets larger, you're going to collide and work with different people. My little single, short that I do on my iPhone is going to be my first movie, let's say, and I can make all my choices and all my mistakes, and that's great. I'm going to show it to people, and then I'm going to impress Seth here, and Seth's going to want to do a movie with me. Well, now I have two people I have to work with, and we have to figure out what our look is. And then when we do ours, you guys want to make a movie with us, and now the four of us are doing a short. All of a sudden, you're starting to learn those skills of collaboration. Not only the tangible skills of the actual software, you've run into a number of problems, like making things that you naturally do, and you've been able to go to the technical manual and figure out how to get past those. I don't know about you, but I don't just sit back with a 400-page technical manual, a glass of wine, and a fire pit. And I don't? Is that crazy? And learn Adobe Premiere or Quantel Rio or something like that. I wait until I do a project, I throw myself in it, and then when I'm stumped, when I'm stuck, I use it kind of like a legal reference library, right? Like a lawyer would go, I don't know what the answer is, but I know where to find the answer. I flip through the book until I figure it out, and I read all around it. Okay, cool, and then kind of keep going. So anyway, long story short, how do people get tangible skills? I think it's by going out and doing it, and that's exactly what we talked to a bunch of students about. And it's just, it's mileage. It's what I think there's a phrase at 10,000 hours that something makes you an expert, whether you're a dachshund wrangler, a professional bookie, or an entertainment person. So get those 999 hours of garbage out of your system as quickly as possible.
I think at some point there has to be a start. And for many of us, we have a kind of mentality that we need something professional in terms of equipment to have the start. So perhaps maybe explaining that just using a phone, probably finding an app that you could put on the phone to do some editing, something like that, is a start. After he was finished with his presentation at SJC-JC, I think we were bombarded by about 12 students. And the concept of, they were all interested in film, in terms of production. And he basically said to them, well, you have to do it as a group, which is a concept that we would want to let everybody know. There's also the other aspect in Belize where one person thinks that they could do everything. And I've learned in my career also that I can't do everything. So I narrowed down to just post-production also and sound. At one point in time, I began animation and I stopped. I began writing scripts, I stopped. It is what you are comfortable with, you stick to. You try to develop that skill. So hopefully we could perhaps form a film club out of that group at SJC and have them work with just their telephone. I had offered the students 2 spots at the screenwriting workshop. They took advantage of that. So those are 2 potential scriptwriters for them. In that bunch, you had somebody, 1 or 2 who are into animation, 1 or 2 into sound, and that is what you have right there, a core group of a production team. I have a concept that I want to do for next year that has also to do with the phone in terms of a competition. And as soon as I'm finished putting the details together, I will release that, because we want to attract as many Belizeans into the film industry, starting from a very small point. It is saying to them, identify something that you're familiar with. Tell a story about it. It could be you walking over a London Bridge every morning, facing a crocodile looking at you, a snake swimming under you. Tell that story. Use a phone, tell that story. Let's see what it looks like. Then attach you to somebody who is more professional in the field and have them tweak that. And later on, let's look at it as a community. So we have to start at some point, and I think from my perspective, I'm beginning to draw different levels of participation in the film industry. And I'm sure that the film commissioner, in particular Nigel, has embarked on this Tell a Belizean Story campaign. We just need to know how to tell a Belizean story at an international level. That is all we need to do. And I think that is a campaign which makes sense, because each individual has a story to tell. It's just how we tell it.
There's something else to just piggyback on that a little bit that we talked to the kids about over at the junior college. This is a really exciting time in technology and in entertainment technology, like the stuff that's right here. 20 years ago, you would have had to convince a small number of maybe production studios or whatever to go out and buy a giant Panavision camera, and you'd have to buy film, and you'd have to get a lab to develop that film and all that stuff in order to get your vision out there. Like exactly what Seth is saying with the phone, with the accessibility of tools, phones. I've gone to a giant convention in Las Vegas every year called NAB, and it's all about emerging technology and all this kind of stuff. It's not about giant $100,000 cameras or $200,000, techno cranes or things anymore. It's all about the $1,000 drone that can do all these amazing moves. Small cameras that are waterproof that you can take under the sea or shoot around land. And it's just a really exciting time that all these tools are democratized enough that anyone can get a hold of it. The barrier to entry is just not there.
Yeah. Now, when you're talking about putting something together from start to finish, it's a process that it's almost, you do it in quiet, in isolation, maybe with a team. I'm talking about, let's say you're doing a production that takes a year, How do you maintain your focus during that time and keep motivated? Because I think for a lot of people, because of the instantaneousness of Instagram or Facebook, and you get the like along the way. Sometimes you're working on a production, you can't release any of it, and you have to be there just toiling away continuously. How do you maintain your focus?
Well, I think that is a great question, by the way. I think the tendency is to become pretty isolated. We've talked a bit about like a film being it's a team sport, right? I think you have to continue that mentality and be very focused on interim deadlines and sharing it with a core group of people to get notes. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you're a director and you're taking on a short film, right? It's not just you have an idea, you're going to prep for it, you're going to shoot it, you're going to be done. Oftentimes there's a notes process, an iterative process where you take the footage that you've gone out and shot and you cut it together and then you show friends and family. like a close-knit group,
Yeah.
and start getting reactions, and they might say, that's fantastic. They also might say, it's kind of boring. And then you're back in there maybe massaging it, tightening up the edit, going out for reshoots, doing that. Animation offers some other options because it's an entirely fabricated world. You can take on, I was just talking to some filmmakers the other day about this. You can take on, for example, the performance of the entire piece without focusing on the backgrounds at all. And so now that you've done all the performance for across the entire film, you now can look back and kind of do that same tightening that you did in a live action. So you tighten it up and share it with people, keep those touch points open is I guess where I'm kind of going with this, right? Keep touching it. Hey Seth, what do you think about this? Hey William, what do you think? Hey, can we do this? Can we tighten this up? And that's how you don't go crazy and be so myopic and isolated and get focused on something. It's really, it's the job of strong producers and line producers to keep you motivated and moving. Whether it's through, iterative approaches through animation, like where you do performance and tighten it up and then do backgrounds and then tighten it up and then maybe do your effects and tighten it up a little bit and then go into post. Each of those can carry milestones so that a year-long schedule really looks like a series of 2-month schedules. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, and I have another question, because when you're thinking about a post-production kind of calendar, as you're referring to, how do you get the feedback that you want to actually impact what you, because sometimes people become, you have an idea and this is your passion and this is your vision, but how do you allow outside interactions to shape it but still make it feel as if though it's an original? Because I think a lot of people grapple with that. If I take something to you and say, oh no, because of so and so, how do I use that feedback to actually make something, uniquely?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, because if you don't want to ask me for notes and all of a sudden the piece is mine, right? It comes down to the filmmaker, the director primarily. The director is the one that's in charge of the vision all the way through, that unifying element. He or she has been intimately involved in the script, was intimately involved in the performance capture, whether that's animation or capturing on set with cameras, is intimately involved in the editing process to maintain the spirit of what their big idea was all the way through, right? It's their job. That's their job. As much as my job is to make sure images look pretty and sound is pleasant. That director's job never stops, and it is a grueling position. And there's lots of tools that you can use. You do have to curate the voices you ask. You don't want to ask everyone. Let's take Hollywood, right? They do test screenings. It's very, very common. So what they'll do is they'll take an early cut of a movie, and they'll usually go outside of the main city, outside of friends and family and people that could be connected. They'll go out into, into the suburbs kind of thing, and they'll show the movie. They'll show the movie to an audience that then fills out a survey afterwards. So then you get the results of that survey. How much do you like the main character? 1 to 5. Oh, the main character scored a 3.5. Okay, maybe I should consider something there. What do you think of the villain? 1 through 5. Well, that scored a 5. I think we're pretty good there. And then it's the director's job ultimately to interpret that and either agree with them or disagree with them. To your point, I think it always lands within the show's director, the producer, the core team. They have permission to ignore notes as well. Do you know what I mean? They're not obligated to do anything. You are asking someone there. If you ask somebody the advice on what color to paint your house, would you just do whatever they said? The answer is no, right? You'd take in some input. Maybe I might ask a couple of people. You think purple? You think blue? I agree with this guy. So it's a balancing act, and it's a constant balancing act, and I think that's what makes kind of a director's job, and then the producer as his or her counterparts very tough at times.
I also like the fact that you were talking about animation and creating even the backdrop. Very often when we think of something coming to Belize, it's the tropical kind of lushness that you're looking for, the setting. And I think Seth touched on something about Nigel saying about a Belizean story.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times you're looking for a universality that people can connect with. How do you encourage people to maintain their authenticity but make it universal?
I think it is as personal as writing music, right? It is as varied and as different as every song is the process and how you make those songs, right? The way Kurt Cobain wrote music is probably very different than the way that Bob Dylan wrote music. Is very different than the Isley Brothers. Is very different than whatever else, right? Everybody's got their process, and filmmaking and that voice is what people need to curate and they need to build. That is where screenwriting workshops and tangible skills to be able to get those big ideas, those stories out of people is the right idea. And then the real trick of filmmaking is making sure that that story stays true to the end. That's that director's burden that I kind of mentioned, right? How do you keep it authentic and original is by creating. I feel like a broken record. The more you create, the more you will find what that voice is within inside of you. My own life is a tiny example. Things have changed, right? I'm almost 40. I'm a different man than I was when I was 20. If I was to make a movie now, it's going to be definitely different than the movie I made when I was 20. Just different voice, different thing. But you got to stay authentic to that, and you got to try and be as honest and open and kind of self-analyze how you're feeling about things and what you think about things. And that can be silly like dancing cows, or that can be serious like walking across London Bridge and not being eaten by a panther or a jaguar or whatever else.
I personally think that I would like to split it into two groups. You have the art and the science. You might be wondering why I'm saying that. Keeping the Belizean story authentic is the art aspect. Taking it to an international level is where the science comes in. For example, during the screenwriting workshop, Ms. Myrna Manzanares spoke of a story she has written, and Chris asked about the almond tree, whether it had something to do with ghosts or related to spirits or something.
Hammond's tree.
Right, Hammond's tree. That is something that the international community doesn't know. That
sounds awesome.
That is something cultural to us. And therefore, the scientific part of that would be how you translate that to an international audience, to have them understand within your film, whether it be short or long, that this is what we view or how we view the Hammond's tree. So, and that is why I split it into the art aspect and the science aspect, because there's some explaining we will have to do to have the international audience understand our culture. What we do from what we don't do, what we like from what we don't like, the reason why not. And that is what I call the science aspect, but keeping the art authentic to what is us. I think that is what is most important for us.
You triggered something in my mind because, very often when we are talking about telling Belizean stories, people think that it must feature Belize and the culture and etc. What makes a story, I would say, Belizean? Is it because it's a Belizean writer? Is it because it's a Belizean setting? I ask that question because I think that's something that a lot of Belizeans grapple with. If you're doing hip hop, for example, do Belizean music, people might say to you, right?
And what is Belizean music?
And what is Belizean music? So I'm just asking that question as a person who may not have that burden of, wearing a smaller country on your back, where it's, if I want to do sci-fi, or something else, it may be labeled not authentic or not Belizean.
I think that decision has to come down to the individual, right? I mean, it is, I think authentic is a personal choice from everyone. It is not your responsibility to identify your national, you don't have to be Belize, you have to be William. You're Seth, I'm Greg. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way. So you carry Belize with you through your experiences. I grew up in a small dairy farming community in Washington State, up in America. I carry that with me, the idea of pickup trucks and flannel shirts and cold weather. You know what I mean? The smells of cows. That's part of me and the tapestry that I am, and that'll go whether I make a sci-fi movie or a dancing cow movie or whatever else. Whatever role I'm playing, I'm bringing that kind of small town aspect with me because it's a piece of me. It's all of the building blocks that have made me the man I am today. So to be authentic is truly to look inward and be aware of one's drive, one's emotions, one's stories. And that could be colonizing Mars, but you're taking Belize with you that entire way.
I don't think saying the Belizean story means you have to, the flag and the anthem. I think saying the Belizean story means exactly what Greg is saying. You as an individual, you're a Belizean. But your story might take you to London, to somewhere in Asia, because you've been there. It is your story. And I think at the end of the day, we are just simply saying the Belizean story, meaning that each individual, each of us who lives here, we have a story. We have a story of some form. It might not be an exciting story, it might be a boring story, it might be a hilarious story, but a story that could be told. And it depends on how we write the story. We keep it authentic to ourselves. We keep it authentic to the community we came from. And I think that is what we basically mean when we say Belizean story. It does not necessarily mean, well, it has to have to show some politics. No, it is your story. What you want to tell. So you, William, gets up at 5 in the morning to get ready to go and host the OIE morning show. That is your story. The troubles you have to go through just to prepare yourself to come here. You want to tell a story, that is your story. It's authentic to you, it's authentic to here. And I think that is what we mean.
I think it's that individual nature, that very thing. Like if I ever wrote a story and wanted to go home, my picture of home has giant pine trees and a little fence in the front and the living room's upstairs and this. If you write a story and you're going home, it may look different. Like that individual part of it, that all that forms the picture in your head of what this story should be.
The phrase, I think, is just a phrase to say, well, let's get more of us to write. Let's get some script going.
Yeah.
Let's tell some tales. Because I think at one point in time, the whole storytelling aspect has died off in Belize, beginning to pick up back slowly. So it's to say, well, okay, we have some stories being written. Let's see how we could translate that into screen. Let's see how we could translate that into maybe a 5 minutes, a 10 minutes, or a 15 minutes. And if you could take it larger than that, take it larger than that. But we have to start at some point in time. We do not want to copy anything from outside and try to recreate it when we have our own. It's just, let's start. And let's start from where we are, our story, our tale.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I think valuing our stories is critical. And, very often it's easier for us to think that anything foreign, unfortunately, is better. And I like the idea that you're talking about the art and the science and how you can improve and bring it and keep it uniquely Belizean. So I really want to thank you both for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Too.
Any final words?
Keep writing. Keep writing, keep shooting things. Just get those 9,000 hours out of your system.
Yeah, I think just beginning to write. Just begin to write something. You have an interest in any aspect of film. Give us a call at the Film Media Arts Unit at Niche. You could also contact BAVIA, the Belize Audiovisual Industry Association. They should be going out and doing some PR soon on a membership drive. We're really trying to get people who are interested in the industry to come together collectively and to begin make decisions as to the way forward.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be to talk about Garifuna appreciation, and we'll be focusing on the language. Of course, this is Culture Week leading up to the 19th, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
Marine in an avatar body. That's a potent mix.
You get me what I need, I'll see to it you get your legs back. Your real legs.
Hell yeah, sir.
Looks like you. This is your avatar.
Just relax and let your mind go blank. It shouldn't be hard for you.
Jake, it's real simple.
I want you to